Okay, so you're playing chess and you're doing all the right things. You're controlling center. Yeah, light squares. Center's like my backyard. It's my turf. Very good. And you developed all your pieces. Yeah. Bishops and knights doing a tango. Very good. And your king is safe. Yeah, cocooning that frail old man, making sure there's no nasty checks. Very good. And you're not playing blitz or bullet. No. I only play 15-minute rapid with a 10-second increment. I like to improve my game. Very good. And so you have a position like this where you have the white pieces and there's no tactic to win material. However, you sense you're winning with this knight on here on f5, but you're wondering what move can I make to improve my position. And this is a very common problem in chess. In my 3 years of playing, when there's no obvious tactic, I'm always thinking, what should I even do in some middle game position? And so if I was to ask you to come up with a good move here for white, many of you are going to be like, I don't know. And now you just sound like George Bush when he was asked, who's the Prime Minister of India? George, tell us.
Prime Minister of India is, no.
Don't worry, George. It's okay. It's not like you're the president or anything. And you know what book tells you who the Prime Minister of India is? Simple Chess by Michael Stean. And so in my 3 years of playing chess, I bought many chess books, and this was the one I actually read. And I love this book because it gives you basic, simple ideas when thinking about your game. And so one of the things Michael Stean talks about is attacking weak pawns or getting your opponent to tie down its resources defending weak pawns. And so if we return to this position, obviously a pawn like a7 is very weak. However, what he says that adjacent pawns like c6 and d6 in this particular case are also weak because it requires heavier pieces to defend them. And so there is a pressing move here that white can make that can put black under a lot of pressure. And so with that clue, you might want to pause the video and work out what move white should make. Now this is from a real game. There's a link in the description below. And so you might be like, light squares, I know what to do. I'll play queen d2 and then I'll play rook d1 and I'll put a lot of pressure here on this d6 pawn. Oh guys, you can't do that. There's no time. That's too slow. Because your opponent can play a move like bishop e6, remove this knight, and then this pawn is going to be hanging and you've got a whole bunch of problems yourself. There's a better move here for white, and that move is bishop g5. Okay, and so what bishop g5 does, and that's the top entry move, I believe that's what was played in the game, is it threatens to remove one of the defenders here of this d6 pawn, which is currently double attacked. Okay, and so if we entertain some variations here, you can see that black just gets into a lot of pain. So after bishop takes g5, knight takes g5, this pawn is now hanging. There's no time to play h6 because after, say, knight takes f7, rook takes f7, queen takes d6, and you're just blundering a pawn. White is just in a winning position. And so in a position like this, maybe your opponent is going to play rook on f to d8. Okay, fine. And now we have queen h5, threatening to capture here on h7. Maybe queen g4 is a stronger move, but I think humans are going to play queen h5. And so let's say you have h6, and now you have knight takes f7. Let's say queen takes f7. And now in this position, the engine likes rook c1, the engine likes rook d1, maybe queen g4 is a move for some reason, and you're putting pressure here on the black army. Okay, so bishop takes g5, knight takes g5 just leads to a whole bunch of problems here for black. Instead, in the game, we saw rook on f to d8, okay, protecting this d6 pawn further. And now white plays the move rook c1, okay, threatening to capture this pawn outright. And so how would that happen? Say you just waste a move. We just obviously have knight takes e7 check, knight takes e7, bishop takes e7, queen takes e7, and now of course rook takes e6, and white has just won a pawn. White is in a winning position. And so given this tactic here on e7, black is forced to play the move rook to c8. Okay, and now white played the move rook to c3, okay, threatening to stack up material here on the c file and put a lot of pressure here on this c6 pawn. And in this position, you might be saying, well, why can't black just play the move c5? Because now this pawn on d6 is just a backward pawn. It can never be protected by another pawn. And after, say, rook d3, black is just in a world of pain. White is in a completely winning position. And so there's all kinds of tactics here. I believe what a human would play in this position is, say, rook c6, trying to quadruple defend this d6 pawn. But now you have some tactics here. After knight takes e7, knight takes e7, you remove the only defender of this e5 pawn. Remember, this is not a defender of the e5 pawn because the queen is in x-ray. And now, of course, you have knight takes e5, and white is just in a completely winning position. And so what you see throughout this is black being tied down to the defense of these c6 and d6 pawns. And that's something you can actually think about in your games. Okay, so the second example is from Fischer-Petrosian 1971 candidates match. Fischer has the white pieces, Petrosian has the black pieces. And this whole game is a masterclass from Fischer. I provide a link in the description below. And so what we can see clearly here is that black has these weak pawns on d5 and on a6. But it's not immediately obvious how we can put this structure under pressure. And so Fischer actually finds the top engine move. You might want to pause the video and work it out. It's not easy. However, the clue I can give you is that this light square bishop is the bad bishop for black. It's tied down to the defense of this d5 pawn, whereas this dark square bishop is the good bishop. It's kind of free to move around. So what kind of move would you make in this position? Okay, well done if you worked it out. Bishop played a top engine move, which is bishop c5. And now black has problems. Okay, so black obviously cannot move the bishop away because the rook is hanging. And if black decides to take on c5, then you have knight takes c5, and now this pawn is hanging. And if you try to move it, well, white is going to win a pawn anyway because of knight takes e6, f takes e6, and now rook takes e6, and white is just in a winning position. And so bishop takes c5 is just kind of out of the question. Petrosian understood this and instead played the move rook to e8, and now Fischer played the move bishop takes e7, rook takes e7, and Fischer follows up with b4. And he accurately calculates that a5 isn't a threat because after b5, this is just a winning endgame for white. This pawn is just going to march up the board. It's going to be too strong. It's going to get resources behind it. And so in this position, Petrosian plays the move king f8. And now one of the additional benefits of playing b4 is that it's created a permanent outpost here on c5. And so what's that? An outpost is just a square which cannot be attacked by pawns. And so in order to move this knight, you're going to have to get a heavier piece involved to remove it from that position. And of course, there's no time to do that because the a6 pawn is hanging. Obviously, if Petrosian moves the rook across to defend it, then we're just going to have the same tactic here on e6. And so in the game, what we saw was bishop c8. And so here, what you can see is that heavy pieces from black are being tied down again to the defense of weak pawns. They're not involved in attacks. Okay, so 2 examples from Simple Chess, which I hope were instructive. You can start thinking about weak pawns in your games and the weak structures that your opponent has. And obviously, when they're isolated and you're just attacking them, you know what to do. However, there are more subtle situations where adjacent pawns, like in the first example, are weak, and you've got to come up with moves whereby your opponent is forced to use the heavy pieces that they have to try and defend it. And obviously then you're in a completely commanding position. The tactics will work in your favor. Thank you very much for your time.